Welcome to our Oilfield Water Services Field Case Study series. My name is Ross McCartney, and in this series I'll be showing you field examples of how produced water analyses can be used to benefit scale, water, well and reservoir management. For all these case studies, where they have been published, the reference for the work is given at the end of the presentation. In this presentation, I'll show you how natural traces in produced water can be used to constrain and improve reservoir models if they are used in a systematic history matching procedure. This example is from the Veslefrikk field, located in the Norwegian North Sea. The field was under seawater flood and produced water samples had been collected monthly from all the production wells. The produced water from each well was either formation water or mixtures of seawater and formation water. Of the available produced water analyses, they looked at those for calcium, magnesium, potassium, barium, strontium chloride and sulfate. To determine whether these constituents were significantly affected by reactions in the reservoir during the seawater flood, they compared the produced water analyses against theoretical mixtures of seawater and formation water. And this check demonstrated that sulfate, chloride, magnesium and potassium were not significantly affected by reactions in the reservoir, and so could be used as unreactive natural traces of seawater and formation water in the produced water. Now the focus of their study was production well P. They ran a history match reservoir model, and the predicted water cuts and pressures from this model were in reasonable agreement with measured data. For example, in this figure, the predicted water cut for well P is shown by the blue line and the measured water cut by the orange solid symbols. You can see that the predicted and measured water cuts over time fit reasonably well, except for some anomalous early water breakthrough predicted by the model. They also ran the model in tracer mode using sulfate as a natural tracer of the injected seawater. Sulfate was chosen as the tracer because its concentration in seawater was very high at 2,800 mg per litre, and its concentration in the formation water was very low, being close to 0 mg per litre. So it was a sensitive natural tracer of seawater breakthrough in the production wells. There was also reasonable agreement between the predicted and measured produced water sulfate for most wells, except that is for well P. The lower figure compares the predicted and measured values over time, and you can see that the model predicts an earlier and greater rise in produced water sulfate concentration than was observed in the produced water analyses. So the model was predicting much earlier and more significant seawater breakthrough than was actually being observed. So they needed to modify the reservoir model to prevent early water breakthrough and early seawater breakthrough in well P. This would improve the match between the predicted and measured water cut and produced water sulfate concentrations for this well. Initially, different relative permeability curves were used for the P area, but these did not improve the match. So the tracer tracking option in the model was then used to determine where the injection water entering well P in the model was coming from. This showed that this was dominated by injection water from injector A during earlier production where the match is poor. It was found that water from injector A had to travel around a fault to reach well P, and by increasing the length of this fault by 200 meters, this could delay seawater breakthrough in this well. The figure on the right shows the improved match to the measured produced water sulfate concentration using the revised model as shown by the red line. This match was refined by slightly increasing the transmissibility of the fault. The lower figure shows that they also obtained an improved match with the measured water cut for well P, and this was achieved by modifying the relative permeability in the vicinity of this well. So now they had good matches for both measured and predicted water cut and produced water sulfate for well P. This study showed that produced water analyses can be used directly to constrain the reservoir model where the reservoir is under water flood. Discrepancies between the observed and predicted natural tracer concentrations can be used to identify where there are weaknesses in the model, and this information can then be used to highlight where improvements to the model should be made. This approach requires the identification and use of a natural tracer in the produced water that is not significantly affected by reactions in the reservoir. In this case, the selected tracer was sulfate, but in other reservoirs, this ion can be reactive. So it's important to always first check the reactivity of ions before selecting one to help you constrain the reservoir model. Also, in this case, raw produced water sulfate analyses were compared with predicted sulfate concentrations to constrain the model. But as you will have seen in this case study series, a lot of additional information can be obtained by interpreting produced water analyses, and all this information can be used to constrain the reservoir model too. For example, interpretation of produced water analyses can provide information on the type of water being produced from a well, produced water allocation, zones in a well that are producing water, and the location of injection water breakthrough in a well. All this information can be compared with predictions from the reservoir model, and where discrepancies are identified, the reservoir model can then be modified and improved to provide predictions that are more consistent with the information derived from the produced water analyses. I hope this brief presentation has given you a greater insight into the value of produced water analyses. If you require further information, please visit our website at www.oilfieldwaterservices.co.uk, where you will find our extensive publication list, which cover many field cases. You can also contact me via my email on ross@oilfieldwaterservices.co.uk. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more videos from us on the uses of produced water and formation water analyses in the oil industry. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that we can be of service to you soon.